Welcome into the 49ers Report post-game show here live on the 49ers Report by Chat Sports. I am your host, Jay Sr. 49ers Report presented by Manscaped. 20% off and free shipping if you head to manscaped.com/49ers. It's the end of the summer, but it's a great opportunity for you to basically be in shape for your significant other. Best men's grooming products available on the open market. If you head to manscaped.com/49ers, we'll put that link in the comment section and the description of this video. So obviously, this game, an absolute disaster for San Francisco. I think the Chicago Bears, one of the worst teams in the NFL, and the fact that the Niners go on the road and lose to Chicago by a final score of 19-10 is an overall disaster for San Francisco. And I have said this for a really long time. It was imperative. It was really, really important for the Niners to get off to a fast start this year. They couldn't afford, with a new quarterback and an experienced quarterback in Trey Lance, to start the 2022 campaign like they did the 2021 season, getting off to a slow start in which they started 3-5, and then they had to play catch-up throughout the entire duration of the 2021 season. They lose that Thursday night game against the Tennessee Titans, and then they had to win the final week of the regular season against the Los Angeles Rams, coming down from 17-0 to just get into the playoffs. And we know how things ended up during last year. They got into the playoffs after coming back against the Rams, and then wild card round, they take down the Cowboys, and then divisional round, they take down Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, a number 1 seed. They give up 7 points on the first drive of the game, 3 points the final 3 quarters. But because of the way that this schedule is lined up for San Francisco, and because you have an inexperienced quarterback in Trey Lance, you can't afford to start the season off slow to play catch-up like they did last year. It's very rare that you can start 3-5 and then finish with 10 wins in the regular season. So for the Niners to lose this game against the Chicago Bears, it's an indictment on the coaching staff, considering how many penalties took place throughout this game. I understand that the conditions were absolutely porous, but the Niners had this game within their grasp. It was there for the taking. They could have won it. To come out of recess following halftime and to go on that long drive in which it was elongated and you took up half of that third quarter clock and you settle for 3 instead of 7, you're thinking, okay, San Francisco's in a good spot. They're up 10-0. 19 unanswered points for the Chicago Bears, who look like the inferior team against the Niners. Yet you still begin a season in which you had Super Bowl aspirations at 0-1 against a Bears team in which you thoroughly outplayed. You take a look at the numbers here. San Francisco was the better team throughout this matchup, Coop. If we take a look at the side-by-side stats here, total yards, San Francisco outgained Chicago, 331 to 206. Passing yards, 155 to 105. Rushing yards, San Francisco was really good, especially when Elijah Mitchell was actually on the field, 176 to 101. Third down efficiency, Niners were better in that category. But where this game changed and where the complexion of it completely flip-flopped, it is penalties. 12 for 99 yards for the Niners, 3 for 24 for the Chicago Bears. That right there, folks, absolutely significant when it determines the outcome of this game. The 49ers thoroughly outplayed the Chicago Bears, but you cough the ball up in the red zone, Deebo Samuel fumble once you get into the red area, and then you convert on some big third downs and some big plays in this game, but you're unable to capitalize because you make dumbass mistakes. You hit Justin Fields late like Azeez Al-Shire and Dre Greenlaw did on a couple of occasions, and you don't capitalize on some of those golden opportunities. You leave the door open for a bad football team to come back against you and pull off the upset to start your season on a sour note. And that's exactly what happened with the San Francisco 49ers today. And the fans out there, as members of the faithful, should absolutely be fired up at the just inexcusable lack of discipline for the Niners today. You should not lose on the road against the Bears. I understand the field conditions were terrible, and it looked like a lake on Soldier Field. But you cannot lose against an inferior opponent, and that's what the Niners did today. Still a lot left to get to on the show, but I know people are fired up out there. So I want to hear from you right now in the comments section. Grade the Niners' performance tonight and / today, A, B, C, D, or F. Let me know right now in the comment section. So obviously we have to talk a little bit about Trey Lance here because his play was Jekyll and Hyde. Throughout the first half, I thought that he looked like the better quarterback as compared to Justin Fields. He's with the better team. But then after recess, that's when the Bears were able to get that momentum after the 49ers kind of failed to really capitalize on some important moments. And Justin Fields looked like the more clutch quarterback and the more seasoned quarterback as compared to Trey Lance. So Lance ends the day 13 of 28, 164 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. And this is the advantage of Justin Fields playing half of the year last year and Trey Lance only making 2 starts. When Justin Fields was pressured and he was under siege all throughout the day, it looked as though Fields was running for his life. And Trey Lance was a more comfortable quarterback with the better roster. But Fields was able to make big plays in the guts of the game when the pressure was on because he has that experience level over Trey Lance. So to not play Lance a lot last year, I thought really cost San Francisco in this game because especially when the rain was coming down and the field was absolutely flooded, Lance couldn't make plays, but also Justin Fields found a way. He has this innate ability to extend plays in the pocket, buy time, to find receivers downfield. And with that, it's the benefit of experience. Fields has it, Lance doesn't. That's why Fields at the end of the day came through with the win, looked like the better quarterback. And the fact that Dante Pettis burned this team on a coverage breakdown makes this loss even worse for San Francisco. Because Dante Pettis, who was cut loose by the San Francisco 49ers, he scores a touchdown in this game, and then you take Lance over Fields in the NFL draft, and Lance outplays, Justin Fields outplays Trey Lance, and it just makes this loss seem a little bit more worse than it actually was, and that's why this loss is so bitter to take. Now, we were live for a watch party for this game. We went live for a post-game show, and we're going to continue to give you videos every single day on the San Francisco 49ers Report. So make sure you hit that red sub button down below to subscribe to the channel. Win or lose, we will break these games down and bring you the best 49ers analysis out there on the entire internet. So hit that red sub button and make sure you join the faithful family here at Chat Sports. Couple more notes that I have for this game before we start taking your calls live on call-in. You knew it was going to be a sloppy game with the field conditions and the fact that Soldier Field is just a dumpster fire. And this game was a little bit sloppy to start. But still, no excuses for Deebo Samuel to cough the football up. You have to have ball security. When you got paid like you did, and also when you're inside the red zone, can't cough the football up when Trey Lance made a couple of nice plays. You get inside the red zone, opportunity to capitalize, and you get a score there, whether it's 3 or 7 points. The complexion of this game might change a little bit. Moving forward, one of the bright notes of this game, Talanoa Hufanga. I thought that his interception of Justin Fields dissected that play really well, but as a box safety and as a safety who can kind of do it all, I thought that Talanoa Hufanga flashed a lot, and that's a really good sign for this team moving forward. Without Jimmy Ward, I thought Talanoa Hufanga played really well. Some tackles for loss, good in the ground game, good in the pass game as well. That's one of the lone bright spots for San Francisco today. Javon Kinlaw got injured, banged up a little bit, went into the medical tent. Obviously, that's something to monitor considering the lack of availability for Javon Kinlaw since being that first-round pick out of South Carolina a couple of years ago. On the Deebo Samuel touchdown run, another one of the bright spots in this game, I thought Mike McGlinchey had a really good seal block, so that's a good sign for him because Mike McGlinchey, coming off that torn quad, a little bit gimpy on that knee injury. Mike McGlinchey, the fact that he looked somewhat healthy in this game was definitely big for the Niners. Elijah Mitchell, the injury status there on the Niners injury report, something to continue to monitor. This is a guy who was top 10 in rushing yards per game last year, but he's missed a lot of games in a year change. Missed several last year and then was out pretty much after the first quarter in this game tonight. We'll see what happens with Elijah Mitchell on that front. The fact that the Niners have an actual good cornerback on the outside in Charvarius Ward is a big moment for this team moving forward because they've been lacking that go-to corner the last couple of years, really since Richard Sherman. I think Charvarius Ward, Mooney Ward, the best corner that this roster has seen over the last couple of years. Deebo Samuel's role, it's not going to change. It looks as though since he locked down that big contract, Kyle Shanahan, especially with the weather conditions, he wasn't shying away from using him in the ground game, using him in the pass game, giving him some pitches, giving him some carries. The value of Deebo Samuel is paramount because he's one of the most unique playmakers in the NFL. Scored that rushing touchdown. He's going to be a big part of this Niners offense through the ground game, through the aerial attack as well. And I like that because that's what makes Deebo Samuel so special. As for Trey Lance, I thought he made a couple of big throws in this game, but the weather really does add kind of a downsided element to this game today because Lance certainly missed some throws out there, but the good when the weather conditions were actually pretty solid, I thought Lance delivered a couple of pretty big throws, especially on some critical third downs. But really, what this game comes down to is some dumbass penalties for the San Francisco 49ers. Late hits on Justin Fields to extend possessions, and then other penalties that just should not occur for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. Inexcusable, and that falls on the coach in Kyle Shanahan for that lack of discipline. And then lastly, I want to round out with this. The 49ers defense was great throughout the first half, getting pressure on Justin Fields. The front four looked great. They didn't even have to send blitz packages to get pressure on Fields. But the fact that they folded and fell apart late in this game and gave up 19 unanswered points. I understand the offense didn't do them any favors, but this defense is expected to be one of the best defensive units in the NFL. You can't give up 19 unanswered points to the Chicago Bears in the second half alone to start your season off in such a sour note. And penalties. San Francisco, disastrous in that category. And for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations, for a team that is so talented from top to bottom, you cannot afford to have so many penalties at occurrences in which there are inopportune times. 12 for 99 for the Niners, 3 for 24 for the Chicago Bears. So those are really my thoughts for this 49ers game against the Bears. It's a bad loss and a disastrous loss by any measure. And fans should be absolutely fired up. And speaking of fans being fired up, that's when we're gonna pivot to some of the callers here on Call-In. I do want to start off with Drew. I'm going to make you the first caller here on the 49ers Report live here on Chat Sports. Drew, I know you're fired up. I know you're pissed off. What do you got for me? You're the first caller of the 49ers Report live here on Chat Sports. What do you got, man?
Hey, Chase, thanks for having me. I'm actually a little bit more calm than I would expect. Watching this game, first of all, the O-line doesn't have any identity. Right now, they're not able to, whereas in years past here recently, they've been a really run-dominant offensive line. Right now, they just don't have that identity because of basically the whole, 80% of the line is basically new. Well, I guess McGlinchey, but McGlinchey's still a weak link. So I guess 60% of the line is still relatively new. How bad was that? Was handling Trey Sermon there at the end of the preseason? That really put us behind the eight ball as far as running backs are concerned, because all of a sudden we lose Eli Mitchell and our running game goes completely away. for the penalties, there were a lot of really bonehead penalties that which you would expect them for the first game of the season. I get that, but they were bailed out by 3 really bad calls. The first one being Justin Fields being roughed on the sideline.
Terrible.
Complete garbage. That was a BS call, but that started the momentum for, then you start getting, the players start questioning, well, damn, that kind of thing. I've been on the field before. I've seen that. Trey playing was not as bad as everybody makes it out to be. It was sloppy out there. It was nasty. And if you put Jimmy back there, Jimmy would have been sacked 26 times. I'm sorry, but Trey is not as bad as everybody's making it out to be, especially in the chat. He had the same amount of stats as Jimmy had, only he could escape. So the only Hufanga had a great game, breakout game. Juwan Jennings had a great game. He had a breakout game as well. I give Trey Lance a D grade. I give the team a C- grade, just because the defense started off so strong in the first half. They were an A, but they're at the end they gave it up. And the only thing saving us right now is the Rams losing this week. So I'm gonna hand it back over to you, Chase. I gave you a lot to digest, and tell Nicholas to go kick rocks. Have a good one.
So Nicholas is a Seahawks fan who tunes into a lot of our call-in shows here, but Drew makes a lot of good points. I mean, you lose Elijah Mitchell, and this run game totally changed. And I do think that was a big element of this game. When he went out, the Niners' ground game wasn't the same. And unfortunately for Elijah Mitchell, he has the unique ability to pick up positive yards, to always fall forward, to never be behind the sticks, and be an explosive runner. Unfortunately for Elijah Mitchell, though, he suffers just a bevy of injuries. I mean, last year he suffered several injuries, and that continues to be very problematic for this offense. And Jeff Wilson just doesn't have the same pop, so I agree. As for Trey, you gave him a D grade. I'd probably give him a C grade. But really what this comes down to, it's a difficult game to examine and analyze because of the weather and the fact that it just impacted this game in general, especially when you're trying to ease in a new quarterback and allow him to find his groove. He couldn't do that today. But Trey Lance missed a couple of throws. There's no doubt about that. And this goes down as just a downright terrible loss for San Francisco. There's no other way to put it. I mean, I talked about it all week. Like, the Bears can win this game because if you look at the history of week 1 matchups, San Francisco and other teams in the NFL, they get surprised by some of these week 1 underdogs, just like the Niners did last year against the Detroit Lions. So inexcusable at the end of the day to lose this football game. Speaking of Nicholas, going to make him the next caller here on Call-In. You got called out by Drew, but what do you got, Nicholas?
Well, I'm going to give a breakdown on both sides of the ball.
Okay.
Offense, it was pretty good at the beginning, but then started to decline as it went on in the second half. Plus, Trey Lance didn't have a lot of protection, and he did a really bad job of throwing that pick. I mean, he had all the time, but...
Yeah. No, the interception from Lance was certainly bad, Nick. And the protection, oddly enough, was actually okay, I thought, in the pass game and the ground game to start this game off. And then after halftime, the Bears started getting more pressure, and that's when the 49ers offensive line started to break down a little bit. Like, to start the game, Niners had it moving through the ground game. And I thought that they kind of dominated the trenches. And that was one of my biggest takeaways during halftime, is that San Francisco was controlling the line of scrimmage. But then after halftime, Bears made some adjustments, and the Niners started to fall flat a little bit. And that's when you really saw Chicago start to take over this game. Going to continue to move forward in our post-game show. Ruben, going to make you the next caller here on the Niners Report. Make sure you unmute yourself, and once you do that, you can join the show. Ruben, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on your mind. I see that you unmuted yourself, so what do you got for me, Ruben?
Hey, Chase, it's a pleasure. Fan of the show.
Thank you, man. What do you got?
So I'm just concerned, with the roster that we have. I think we have a win now roster. And, having Trey Lance, and if he doesn't pan out for any reason, Also there's going to be some guys who have like contract years coming up.
Right.
So how would we be able to financially afford some of these guys, like paying them? And then also, do you think this will affect Kyle's job if Trey Lance doesn't pan out?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Ruben, and thanks for calling into the 49ers report. Obviously, this loss is just not ideal, and we've seen that Kyle Shanahan has lost a lot of like head-scratching games. As far as Trey Lance's development, you have to give him some time, but this is part of the problem and the predicament that the Niners are in. So last year in the NFL draft, going back to 2021, they give up those 3 first-round picks. They select Trey Lance. They get aggressive in the draft process to take him. And I understand why they did it at the time, because Jimmy Garoppolo had missed a lot of games. This was a team that was looking for their next quarterback. But now you're in a situation after you gave up that draft capital in which, if Jimmy Garoppolo is on the field today, I think the Niners might have a better shot just because he has a better understanding of the offense. I'm not sure he throws that bad interception at that one point that Trey Lance threw it. And I think that the Niners might be better off just from a win-now perspective with Jimmy Garoppolo as compared to Trey Lance. But the problem with it is you take that future quarterback with a win-now roster, and the timeline doesn't really make sense. Because even now, if you want to go to Garoppolo, you've got to take advantage of Trey Lance being on that rookie contract with the money that you're paying to Fred Warner, to Deebo Samuel, to George Kittle, with what you're about to pay to Nick Bosa. So hindsight is 2020. There's no doubt about that. But when now you revisit the Niners' timeline here of what they've done, a little bit head-scratching that they gave as much up as what they did for Trey Lance, also considering that he played 1 game his final year in college, 1 full season at the collegiate ranks, and now, after sitting basically all of year 1, made 2 starts, we're expecting him to be the franchise guy for San Francisco moving forward. That's why the timeline is just like a little bit tricky. I think the guy has a bunch of ability. We saw it today. He made a couple of really big third down throws. He made a couple of really big runs, but he just doesn't look as primed to have success as a guy like Justin Fields, who is also in year 2, but had the benefit of experience last year. Going to continue to take more calls here. Ruben, next caller on the 49ers report. Make sure I mute yourself, and then once you do so, you can hop on board the show. Ruben, are you there? Let's see. I'll give you 5 seconds. What's up, Ruben? There you are.
Hey, yeah. Actually, you just answered my question previous.
Do you have anything else?
No, just just kind of concerned with Kyle Shanahan's job. If once again, if Trey Lance just doesn't pan out.
Yeah, and my beef for not really making my statement be known for Kyle Shanahan in terms of his job. Like, obviously, him and John Lynch are tied to Trey Lance, and if it doesn't work out, it is a bad look on them that they exhausted that capital to move up to take him. But I don't think that, I think that Kyle Shanahan's one of the best coaches in the league. It's hard to, really gauge what the Niners did or didn't do today, considering the weather conditions. But this is a consistent theme for Kyle Shanahan's tenure since he took over in 2017. Some really head-scratching losses.